Hello everyone, Jeremy Senpai here, and I am giving you an updated version of my old podcast based around the Cartoon Network series Edd'n, specifically the character that is Eddie's older brother. All throughout the series, Eddie's older brother is a bit of an enigma. He has yet to make an appearance until the finale movie, and because Eddie always spoke very highly of him, we get a sense that Eddie's brother has a presence in the series long before he is shown. In order to do this, we are going to go back over the series from episode 1 and all the times Eddie's brother played a major role, or at least his influence is a factor. But keep in mind, I'm not going to go over every little time he was mentioned because they're not needed for our purposes. Plus, character arcs change over time for the duration of the series. In other words, Eddie's brother probably wasn't intended to be the toxic older brother that he is known for today, but there were some very early hints, so we will still be looking at those and we can still see his full character. But from there, we're going to discuss him and even go into a few theories I have. Starting here, Eddie's brother is mentioned in the prank episode Fool on the Ed.
Whoa! Ah! Ah! My brother showed me how to make it before he went away.
This implies that Eddie's brother didn't leave of his own choice. If he moved away, they would say something like he moved out. But no, he went away, like he might have been forced to leave his home, like he was kicked out. Okay, the next episode where I believe Eddie's brother plays a major influence is in To Sir with Ed, where Naz is babysitting Eddie, but he believes that they are on a date. In the episode, Double D and Ed come over to help Eddie with his date, and during the preparation, Eddie says that his brother says that girls are charmed by cash. And I'll go back on this just a little bit later. Okay, next episode to talk about is Ed and the Half Shell. In this episode, the Eds are forced to babysit Jimmy by Sarah. When Eddie sees how Ed and Jimmy take to each other, he decides to try his luck at being a big brother. During this, we see Eddie mistreat Jimmy by giving him wedgies, shoving eggs in his underwear while giving him a wedgie, and very interestingly, he forces Jimmy to move a large rock. But it's not until later we discover that this was a test and Jimmy makes Ed do it. I'll touch on this a little later, but Eddie's final test is for Jimmy to scam the kids. During so, Eddie says this.
Always remember, if you have a lot of cash, you get to spend a lot of time with me.
And after being confronted by Double D, Eddie says this about his brother.
Okay, maybe I was a little tough, but that's how my brother taught me. The only way to get it right is to get it wrong.
Okay, so far, this is the most telling of Eddie's relationship with his brother. This reveals to us all that Eddie most likely treated the same way his older brother, meaning everything we saw Eddie do to Jimmy, Eddie was done to him first. In this episode, Eddie even says it himself that if you have a lot of cash, you get to spend a lot of time with him. To Jimmy, it's Eddie, and to Eddie, it's his older brother. In other words, if Eddie could get money to his older brother, then he would be allowed to hang around him. Another thing here is how Jimmy used Ed to move the large rock. This shows that Eddie's older brother taught him how to use people, and that he probably used people in the same manner, using and scamming people to get him money with no regard for their own well-being. Not that different than Eddie treating Ed and Double D. At least here at this point in the story. Okay, next episode is Ed 011, where we get the first look at Eddie's brother, at least personality-wise. Eddie manages to break into his older brother's bedroom, and here we get a first look at what kind of man he really is. Upon first glance, the items you see around the room can be considered random, as there's a stuffed camel, a refrigerator that has a fold-out bed, and a car. But if you look around, there are some items that are a bit telling regarding A's brother. There is a written marker that says dates on the wall, followed by tally marks of how many girls he's had. Which takes me back to my statement in the date episode, that Eddie's brother did go on frequent dates, but if I had to guess, they were just flings and nothing serious, not serious relationships. But Eddie said that his brother taught him that girls only care about money. As for everything else in the bedroom, I couldn't make anything really out. So if anyone else has any ideas regarding these other bedroom items, then please feel free to share your own ideas in the comments. Honestly, I just couldn't really think of anything. This is really a roadblock for me. The next big episode that features A's brother is Ed Pasadon. After a failed restaurant scam, Eddie laments about it, and he says this.
This should have worked! This scam always worked for my brother! Everything always worked for my brother! You know why they worked for him? Because people respected my brother, and they respected me, because I was with my brother.
He says, this scam should have worked. It always worked for his brother. People respected my brother, and they respected me because I was with my brother. In response to this, Eddie decided to start a rumor that his older brother was coming home, and each of the kids react in different ways. Kevin and Rolf are scared for their lives, while Naz and Johnny are curious and eager to see him, but Sarah and Jimmy, mostly Sarah, is completely indifferent. Almost caught in the lie, Eddie tells everyone that his older brother will be coming home the next day. Much to the surprise of the Edds, a figure Eddie believed to be his older brother, although it's revealed later it was actually Sarah and Jimmy, but if the Edds ever discovered this, it's unknown. This shows that Eddie has an intense fear of his older brother, showing that Eddie, despite putting up a facade that his older brother would be protective over him, when in reality, he's just as much on the receiving end of his wrath. In Ed is Born is the next episode we're talking about. In this episode, Eddie receives a package from his older brother, but the contents are just baby stuff, and it's addressed to a pipsqueak. Now, this could be seen as an older sibling hazing the younger one, but with what we know now, it adds new layers. Also, something worth mentioning, a little later in the episode, Eddie says this.
So, bro, as you can see, I'm a big shot now. No more beating up little Eddie. Hey, big brother?
No more beating up Lil Eddie. At the time, this could have been seen as the kids of the neighborhood beating up Eddie, like whenever he scams them or double crosses them, but with what we know now, it sounds more like an appeal for his older brother not to take the act himself. In other words, he's basically saying, no more beating up little Eddie. In other words, please, big brother, no more beating up little Eddie. Okay, that's it on Central Episodes, where Eddie's brother is featured despite not having an appearance. I want to talk about the few times where Eddie has done something from his older brother that played a role in the story, while big or not, or even the main focus. Eddie has a handful of things that he says were given to him by his older brother. There's a box full of magazines, a report card changing kit, a ball of hot sauce, among others. And now to talk about the one we've all been waiting for. We need to talk about the Big Picture Show finale movie, and from there, I can give you my conclusions regarding Eddie's brother. Okay, the main plot of the movie is that a failed scam from the Edds resulted in them forced to leave the neighborhood with the kids after them for revenge. So, Eddie suggests the idea of finding refuge as older brother's place, and then the movie follows their efforts of locating him since Eddie has no idea where he is. At the climax of the movie, the Edds arrive at a carnival with the kids right behind them. Eddie knocks on the trailer, and we finally are introduced to Eddie's older brother. And well, I don't know what to say. He looks like an older version of Eddie. At first, he seems like a cool guy, saying how he was willing to take Eddie and his friends in. That is, until he tells Eddie that he wants to play the game Uncle. In response to this, Eddie's older brother starts to twist his ankle literally and then starts to toss Eddie at the door of his trailer like a basketball. This is such horrible treatment that the kids who followed the Eds for dozens of miles to beat them up are saying he's going way too far. The Kanker sisters included. Yes, the Eds have always been beaten up or mistreated by the kids of the cul-de-sac, but this is the first time they've seen outright torture, hurting someone for your own twisted pleasure. Double D tries to step up for Eddie, telling off his older brother, but he laughs it off and then lashes out at Ed, earning more shocked reactions from other kids. Then all the other kids start to stand up for Eddie, saying that he's going way too far. Seeing the opportunity, Ed unlatches the pin to the trailer door and then knocks out Eddie's brother. With the threat finally dealt with, Eddie comes out to his friends, admitting that everything he ever said about his brother was a lie, saying that he did it so people would think he's cool and like him. With everything that played out, the revelation of Eddie's abuse at the hands of his older brother, the apology, and the admittance, the Eds are forgiven and accepted by the older kids of the cul-de-sac, bringing the series to a full circle close. Okay, we've gone through the series about Eddie's brother, but now I want to go into my own suspicions and theories. Alright, as I explained here, Eddie's brother was abusive towards Eddie. He was known as a prankster and valued money above all else. So, I'm going to go into my brilliant conclusion that should be fairly obvious. Eddie's brother was most likely the neighborhood bully. Almost all neighborhoods have that one older kid who's the problem child, that one kid that parents would warn their children to stay away from, saying how they're a bad influence, and given how this series takes place in the suburban cul-de-sac, that mindset would be more pronounced, and ironically, it would be this cookie cutter environment where kids would go out of their way to start up trouble to beat the mundane boredom. And that's where Eddie's brother comes in. I propose that Eddie's older brother was the neighborhood bully, causing trouble around in the cul-de-sac and the surrounding town for his generation. His generation, I mean, are the older kids before Eddie and his friends and the other cul-de-sac kids had their generation. But aside from Eddie himself, I don't think his older brother personally messed with any of the other kids. The proof of this is that Kevin said this, "Are the rumors true?" in Ed Pass It On, the rumor episode I mentioned earlier, meaning that Kevin most likely never met him and instead is going off by the second-hand accounts that he's heard about Eddie's brother, not one-on-one experience. Further proof of this is Jimmy and Sarah, who I'm guessing weren't even born while Eddie's brother still lived at home. In fact, Eddie's brother said himself, "Are those the ankle biters from the cul-de-sac?" Meaning that they were all most likely very small children the last time he was home. So this leads to my main theory that Eddie's older brother did something so horrible that their parents had to force him to leave home. With all the information we've been shown regarding Eddie's brother, we know that he was a scammer and a con artist as well, especially by what Eddie said when he was teaching Jimmy, continuing the cycle of abuse. If you have a lot of money, you get to spend a lot of time with me. Something he no doubt said to Eddie and his subordinates, meaning that the only thing he valued was money and how to get as much of it as easily and quickly as possible. The scams were just the path of least resistance. This also played a huge role in how Eddie saw and mistreated Ed and Double D, or at least in the beginning, before he had his big turnaround, which I will mention in another video. That friends were just a means to an end to get money from other people. Proof of this was how Eddie taught Jimmy to move the huge rock by convincing Ed to do it, and how Eddie usually relents to have Double D come up with the ideas of their scams. Eddie is the planner, and Double D is the thinker to make the plan happen. I'm sure Eddie's brother probably had an Ed and Double D of his own, one being the brains and the other being the muscle to carry out his scams. So, Eddie's brother most likely had a gang of friends just like Eddie and probably acted as the gang leader, bullying and conning money out of the other kids, and probably even demanded a bigger cut, if not all of it, from his underlings. In addition, he most likely bullied his victims into his scams. I'm even willing to bet that one of his friends probably lived in the trailer park as shown in the Ed 011 episode, where a phony treasure map led to underneath the Kanker sisters' trailer. I personally think the map was a scam and that location of the Kanker's trailer was merely a coincidence. But back in Eddie's brother's day, that was probably the site for one of his friends living in the trailer park. Some proof of this is the Spookyville map from the Halloween special. The map is most likely another scam that he either conned or bullied someone to buy. Now we get back to the part I mentioned about his dating life. It goes without saying that to a degree, there is an interest in the bad boy of the neighborhood, whether it's the belief that the girl can change him or that they find that kind of thing appealing. But again, I fully believe that his dates were just flings and that he wasn't as heavily interested in them as they were in him, and as a result, the relationships never lasted long, which is why he claims to have 13 dates. But there's also what Eddie said about girls and money. This tells me that Eddie's brother used money to get the attention of girls, meaning he saw to get into romantic relationships with in a very superficial way. Now, we're going to enter some real theory territory. So hang on tight because I promise you there is a method to my madness. Let me take you back to Naz. She said that Eddie's brother was really hot and cool, indicating that she might have a bit of a crush on him. Shouldn't be hard since he's older and she's younger, but I don't think she was ever acquainted with him, as again, she would be far too young. So, I'm proposing that Naz has an older sister. An older sister the same age as Eddie's brother, so they were most likely classmates, and maybe even friends, or what he considered to be friends at least. So I'm saying that Naz's older sister probably was involved with Eddie's older brother back in their school days. So much so that she acted like all schoolgirls do and falling head over heels in love with him. So much so that she relented everything regarding Eddie's older brother to her younger sister Naz. And in doing so, Naz probably developed a second-hand crush of admiration for Eddie's older brother, even though she probably never met him nor had much one-on-one time with him. But alas, like I said, and how I have evidence to back this up, Naz's older sister was just a fling, and the relationship fell apart. Either he broke up with her, or she dumped him when she realized how terrible a person he really was. Okay, now we're starting to paint a bare picture of Eddie's brother in his older days. I mean, in his early days, sorry. But what led him to leaving his home? Well, as I explained before, and with plenty of evidence to show, I'm proposing that Eddie's brother was the neighborhood bully and problem child who got in trouble multiple times. So one night, he probably got into so much trouble that he had to be brought home by the police, and from there his parents, finally having enough, forced him to leave the house. Eddie said it himself before he went away, indicating that he didn't leave of his own choice. And keep in mind here that Eddie's brother had a report card changer kit. This means he probably didn't get good grades in school, so it's a safe assumption that he was a poor student and most likely didn't bother to continue his education. I mean, why bother when you can make a living from scamming, conning, and bullying, am I right? I mean, he has no reason for school, not when he can make easy money from suckers or just force it from people. And you know what? Since I bring that up, that actually adds a bit of a dark element when it comes to when he hit Double D. Think about it. This guy looks like he's in his early 20s, and as we know, the Eds and the rest of the cul-de-sac kids, except for Jimmy and Sarah, are in middle school. So that means a legal adult just attacked a kid. So, just something I want to throw in there. Okay, back to my main point. In the aftermath of him leaving, or being forced out, his little gang fell apart with their leader gone, and eventually everyone grew up, left, and went on to live their own lives, and in doing so, the kids of Eddie's generation would come along afterwards. And when I say come along afterwards, I mean that the families would move out, having no need of big houses or a close proximity to a school. So if I had to guess, Eddie's brother most likely bounced from one menial job to another one, in between scamming people, before ending up in the carnival where, no offense to anyone who works at a carnival or has, the main purpose is to scam people out of their money and time. A lot of proof of this is that he lives in a trailer on the carnival grounds. He goes from the leader of a gang with underlings to do his bidding to being a carnival worker where nothing has changed. This man is in his early 20s and he's most likely a school dropout with no real world work experience. And of course, like most carnivals, they travel around. Proof of this is the fact that Eddie had no idea about his current whereabouts, indicating that Eddie's brother has only contacted Eddie and not their parents. This even explains why Eddie's parents are so strict with him, as they had one problem child and didn't want to risk another. The earliest that we see the Eds is in a flashback where Eddie first met. The earliest that we see the Eds is in a flashback when Double D first met Eddie and Ed. And if I had to guess, they look to be about kindergarten age. So it's a safe assumption that neither Double D or Ed had met Eddie's brother at this time, especially since they first meet him in the movie. So this was probably when Eddie's brother was kicked out, or at the very least, this is where it was leading up to. There's even a glass in his bedroom that reads Peach Creek Diner Eating Competition, and the year on the mug is 2000, meaning that he lived at home by that year and was probably forced out months or a year or two after. So, in conclusion, Eddie's brother was a neighborhood bully who pretty much ran the neighborhood and in his day until he did something so horrible that his parents forced him to leave, and in doing so, he just doubled down until he became the failure at life that he rightfully deserves to become. But what do you think? That's all I've got to say. So let me know if you guys have any ideas regarding Edd'n and Eddie, Eddie's brother, Eddie, etc. I actually do plan on doing a video where I talk about Eddie, but that's for another day. I really wanted to get into this video because I really do find Eddie's brother to be an interesting character. I mean, he's a horrible person and we're supposed to hate him. He's your easy to hate kind of guy. But from a character, from a writing perspective, he is interesting. So if you like what you see and you want to see more good stuff, hit like, subscribe, and all that good stuff. This is Jeremy Senpai. Until I see you next time.